So basically, what we're looking at within Iraq right now is typical um, internecine conflict. Some of it political, some of it religious, and this is what happened. So back in 2003, when the United States invaded Iraq, along with our coalition partners, to kick out Saddam Hussein, who absolutely did have weapons of mass destruction, very active advanced biological weapons and chemical weapons programs, advanced but latent nuclear weapons program, funding, Palestinian suicide bombers to kill Israelis, harboring Al-Qaeda in the person of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi in its northern parts of Iraq. We invaded. And at that point, Muqtada al-Sadr, a minor cleric, a Shiite cleric in Iran, who nevertheless wears the black turban, which when you see it on a cleric, a Shiite cleric, it indicates that they are claiming, whether it's accurate or not, but claiming descent down the bloodline of Muhammad. When you see the black turban on jihadi fighters, that just means they're really bad dudes. So Muqtada al-Sadr rises up. He had previously, by the way, studied at Qom, the seminary city in Iran. Apparently not the best of students. I think he did not get past the level of Hujjatul Islam, if I remember that correctly. Anyway, 2003, he forms and rises up what they call the Jaish Mahdi, the Mahdi army. We spoke about the Mahdi a little while ago. The Jaish Mahdi is the Mahdi army. And this was a Shiite militia under his control, Muqtada al-Sadr, to oppose the United States and our coalition partners in Iraq. And there was a great deal of loss on our part due to attacks by Sadr's militia there. Now, fast forward to the present day, and we're talking about internal Iraqi politics, right? So last October in 2021, there were parliamentary elections. Now, as in most parliamentary systems, not one single party almost ever can gain an outright majority and form a government and rule. It's always one of these coalition deals, right? So what happened then in October of last year is that the pro-Iranian parties were ousted from parliament, and the anti-Iran parties got the most votes in coalition terms, including the followers of Muqtada al-Sadr. However, the Iraqi government, headed by Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi, refused to leave office. And so Iraqi politics have been at something of an impasse ever since last October, with a lot of backing and forthing. But what happened earlier this week is that Muqtada al-Sadr made an announcement that he was resigning all of his political positions and would no longer be active in the political realm inside of Iraqi politics. Well, this got his followers all riled up, and they descended on the Green Zone in the heart of Baghdad, where the presidential palace is located, and also where many of foreign embassies are located, including our own. The U.S. embassy is in there. And at first, they were peaceful protesters about Sadr's resignation, which I guess they viewed as maybe coerced. In any case, they were not violent to begin with. But what happened is that inside of that green zone are representatives of many of what they call the Hashd-e-Shabi, or the PMUs, the Popular Mobilization Units in English. And these, I'm looking at my notes just to remember all of this. They included a number of the groups that we've probably become familiar with. Let me see. Oh, here we go. The Kataib Hezbollah, the Asab, Ahl al-Haq, Harakat Hezbollah al-Nujaba. These are different PMUs, right? Well, they have a quasi official standing within the Iraqi government, even though they are controlled by the Iranian regime in Tehran. Sorry, this gets really complex. It's a muddle. But these units, these Hashd-e-Shabi militias, these PMUs, have a kind of a permanent presence, a barracks located within the green zone, ostensibly to protect the Baghdad regime and the presidential palace there in the green zone. Well, as the followers of Muqtada al-Sadr began gathering within, outside of, and eventually inside of the green zone, those PMUs opened fire on them, live fire. Well, of course, this just accelerated things. The Sadrist followers went and got themselves weapons, including kind of heavy weapons like not just automatic rifles, but RPGs and mortars. And now they are firing back at the PMUs, and there's a complete chaotic situation inside the green zone. This is what got all of our attention a few days ago.
Yeah.
The news is that it's settled down now. Muqtada al-Sadr called his militias off. They have stopped. There's still some sporadic firing going on in there, but it has calmed down a great deal now.
Yeah, you probably saw the same videos from our mutual friend from on the ground, probably not more than an hour, hour and a half after it hit, that had began. It was pretty horrific. I mean,
yeah.
It was shocking to watch.
A lot of violence, but I think it's important here maybe to insert why this happened. So yes, when Muqtada al-Sadr resigned, and it was perceived that perhaps it was coerced and under pressure, he remains to this day an enemy of the West, of the United States, of our close relationship with the Baghdad regime of Prime Minister al-Kadhimi. But he is also, Muqtada al-Sadr, is also anti-Iran.
Exactly.
And perceives that the Iranian regime has too much influence and power over the Baghdad regime, and also that the United States administration under President Joe Biden is also likewise too supportive of, too close to, too ready to acquiesce to the Tehran regime in Iran. And so for all of those reasons, Muqtada al-Sadr and his followers are ready to attack not just the Baghdad regime, but the U.S. as well, and other Western representations.
Mm-hmm. And mentioning Biden, why is he trying to, or his administration, and I'm not trying to be political, but just being pragmatic about what's going on, trying to re-engage Iran, and knowing full well what they're doing and what they believe in, what's going to happen as a result.
It can seem confusing, right? I mean, it doesn't seem to make sense. Now, I might question just how much any of them, in particular the president himself, actually understands about Iran, its Shiite identity, the allegiance to the 12th Imam. I'm not convinced that they really get all that at all, or their apocalyptic, aspirations. But that aside, I think that the Biden administration came into office with the same worldview, the same Weltanschauung, if you will, as prevailed during the Obama administrations. And remember, many of the officials now in the Biden administration, including, of course, Biden himself, were part of the Obama administrations. And so
I'll hold that thought for just a moment. I think.
Okay, sure.
I'm always forgetting something, and that was making sure my power supply was on.
Okay, that's a good thing. and it's all good.
That little portion out.
Okay.
It's going to notice battery low.
Okay. So with these very same officials now serving in the Biden administration, as many of them did in the Obama administration, they hold the same worldview. And that worldview basically is America is a force for ill in the world. And their job, they consider it a moral obligation to take America down a peg or two. And in particular, to remove American power and influence from the world, specifically and especially in the Middle East region. Now, of course, during the Obama administration, that extended across North Africa as well, with the support for the Muslim Brotherhood takeover in collaboration with al-Qaeda, the Islamic uprising of 2011 across North Africa, taking out our allies at the time, Ben Ali in Tunisia, Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, tried for Bashar al-Assad in Syria, but well, what's left of Syria, but that didn't work as with the others. But in any case, remove our influence and allow Islamic jihadist influence to take over. Muslim Brotherhood being Sunnis, and the population of North Africa primarily Sunnis, that they would have control in that part of the world, or of the overall Middle East, North Africa region. But then in the heartland of the Middle East, you might think about it, the Gulf, the Persian Gulf region and around, that just to be fair, just to be even-handed about things, the Shiites ought to get a chance. They ought to have the chance there, and specifically because of the antipathy of these officials in these administrations of ours, antipathy against the Jewish state of Israel, and of course everything that it stands for. And you can see the likewise the parallel antipathy towards our own Judeo-Christian foundations of our own, foundational principles, Declaration, Constitution, and so forth. It's a parallel antipathy, but over there, it's directed specifically against the Jewish state of Israel, and now against those Gulf area, Middle East region area countries that have joined the Abraham Accords, specifically Bahrain, the United Emirates, further afield, Sudan and Morocco too, but notably and importantly with the backing and support of Saudi Arabia. So antipathy towards all of that, and the result is support for, I believe they definitely want Iran to go nuclear, a nuclearized Iran to, in their minds maybe, not only be the un-Trump, but to be the balance, the counter against Israel and Abraham Accords signatories and supporters. That's what I think is going on.
I can follow that logic and reasoning, but it would seem to me that there's got to be some pretty good Islamic scholars and certainly plethora of intelligence that indicates that that is not a good thing, and why it's not a good thing. And is anybody listening to those experts within our intelligence community?
No. The problem here is that anyone who actually had a good scholarly, historical, well-grounded understanding of Islam, jihad, Sharia, the Shiite ideological beliefs, the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, all of that. Anyone who knows anything about any of that has been frozen out of the US government going back at least to the George W. Bush years. So no, there is an entire generation and more of officials, appointees, elected and appointees both in successive administrations, meaning Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden. They are utterly clueless about anything that we've talked about today. They know nothing. And that extends to the intelligence community as well. They have no clue.
Yeah, I would even go as far as to say it goes back even farther than before Bush and before 9/11, back to after the Soviet Union collapsed. Mm-hmm. That, in my recollection from having been inside at the time, there were hardly any true Islamic scholars, experts, linguists, people who nobody could even speak Pashtun, for Christ's sake, and there was a huge void in that capability because they had never been focused on it.
That's right. But what's worse is that void, which you're absolutely right about, was filled by Muslim Brotherhood supporters, front group people, and the Iran lobby, people who supported the Iranian regime and are inside of the National Security Council, inside of the intelligence community, inside of the White House. And so not only was there a void of accurate information about Islam, jihad, Sharia, Iran, Shiite ideology, but that the void was then filled by apologists for Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood, Iranian regime. Think of NIAC, National Iranian American Council, successor to that. We talked about this before. The Quincy Institute, an offshoot of NIAC, think tank now in Washington, D.C. So not only was there a void of the accurate information, the void was filled by just the opposite, lobbyists and apologists for Islam, the Brotherhood, and the Iranian regime.
Mm-hmm. I recall, I cannot recall her name, but she was head of the FBI's linguistics department agency at the time, and she said then that they just absolutely did not have any Islamic scholars, linguists at all. In fact, they were short on linguists in practically every language that they required after the fall of the Soviet Union, because everything had been focused on the Soviet Union. That's what it was. And then when it fell, everybody was running around. Okay, who's our enemy now? What do we need to be looking for? Well, we got to deal with weapons of mass destruction proliferation. But there just weren't. There was a paucity of experts.
Well, they were deliberately kept out. They were purged. I mean, we call it the Great Purge, even. People who were experts, like a Robert Spencer, like an Andy Boston, like a John Guandolo, like a William Gothrop, like a Bill Warner, a Steve Coughlin.
Yes, absolutely.
Literally lost briefing appointments, contracts, because of this great purge, when the actual experts, those who knew something about these topics, were kicked out, and the apologists for Islam, the Brotherhood, its front groups, and Iran were brought in.
Let's switch just a little bit. I want to talk about, because we addressed it a little bit yesterday, when this didn't record, regarding Iran's dealings with Russia and the rogueries, the rogue states of the world.
Exactly.
Russia's in a bad, as I said, Russia's in a bad position logistically. It needs weapons, it needs supplies, it needs everything, and Iran is supplying, as are other rogue nations, circuitry, chips, things that they need, because evidence and photographic evidence has clearly shown that, and some has even come from the West. But how is Iran assisting Russia? I mean, what is their relationship?
It's a relationship that's growing closer, just as you say. And yes, Russia is a nation in decline. I mean, this is Moscow's, this is Putin's last hurrah. But they are in a demographic death spiral, for one thing. Their economy is in shambles and getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
No, the sanctions do not always bite down immediately and hard, but over time, the Russian economy is being devastated on the inside.
Yeah,
it's a process.
Russia
so all of that's going on.
It's imploding.
Never mind its pariah status in the international community, which is not going to change anytime soon as long as the assault against Ukraine continues. So all of those things taken together, but prompt Russia to seek closer ties with other rogue regimes, as you say, with Tehran, with Xi Jinping in China. But at the broader macro level, I always, I think, probably tend to go out to the 25,000 foot level here to look at things. And that is that I think we're looking at a broader issue right now in the 21st century, and that is a conflict between basically, fundamentally, liberty and tyranny. There are regimes around the world, the ones we've mentioned, some others, of course, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, in that category, the rogue regimes, which clump together because, well, where else are they going to go to support each other? And there is the free world, and we would call that those with a Western style, liberal, democratic, representative kind of government, however imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, aspiring to the ideal. That's the conflict. That's the conflict at that level. Whether individuals will be, the key element of a society with individual rights and freedoms that supersede the rights of a collective dominated by a regime, by an authoritative, even totalitarian regime, right? But yes, so between Iran and Russia, Iran, for right now especially, is supplying Russia with some drone capability, UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, which the latest reports I've seen, what a shame, they're not working very well. And Russia wants to use them, of course, against Ukraine, but I guess there's some maybe technical problems with what Iran is supplying to them.
Yes. And speaking of drones, Ukraine has now begun manufacturing Turkey's famous drones. Mm-hmm. Inside Ukraine. They managed to do that. I just want to get back to say that I agree with you entirely that this, and I've said this for a long time, and it's you know it, and a lot of people have said it too. This is an unprecedented conflict. It is a World War III. It's a war between, as you said, liberal democracy, freedom, liberty, versus both dictators and autocrats.
Yeah.
Good versus evil is what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is the battle of our generation, of our lifetime, of this century. I am hopeful, and I think the good news is that the forces of individual liberty, freedom, liberal, Western-style, democratic type of governance, I think those forces are more powerful. They're more attractive, certainly, than the models of tyranny that we see in Moscow or Beijing or Pyongyang or one of these other capitals, these other countries?
Well, the human spirit ultimately wants to be free, and truth wants to be free. And as you said, Russia is imploding because we're seeing. We all have our individual streams of intelligence sources, but there's a larger uprising in Russia than I think most people really realize, and Putin's having he's having a hard time dealing with that and trying to maintain his war of aggression against Ukraine, while at the same time trying to make inroads again into places like Nicaragua and other places in Central America. He's stretching himself way too thin. And his, the western border with China is virtually wide open. We've talked with James, Dr. James Phelps will be on tomorrow about some of these things. And, Ukraine has been able to destroy more tanks and their BDMs or personnel carriers than Russia generally can manufacture in 1 or 2 years. Their attrition rate is terrible. They have no spare parts. When they gone to storage places, they found that everything's already been cannibalized, which is due to corruption. So much was lost in corruption that I don't know whether Putin knew about it or not. Certainly a lot of the generals did. They pocketed the money, and it did not go to the military that the Russian people were told that, was the greatest in the world that they had. And I think obviously they're now realizing that.
Yeah, and thank goodness, also to the tremendous fighting spirit of Ukraine, whose nationhood right now is being forged in battle, and their incredible president, Volodymyr Zelensky, as well as the ongoing support, which is critically important from the West, from Western Europe, from the NATO countries that border Ukraine, knowing that were Putin to be successful in taking over Ukraine, they would be next. That's the important thing. And just to finish up here, the real issue here, and back to my 25,000-foot view, is, do we support the sovereignty of individual nation states, sovereign within their borders, as per the 1648 Westphalian Treaty of Westphalia? And that would apply to both our own U.S. southern border, equally as well as to the Ukrainian one. Borders must be inviolable. Do we support and defend that as the basis of the world order right now, the nation state sovereignty? Or do we revert? Do we allow the world order to revert to a time of kingdoms and empire building and warlords rampaging across the landscape, grabbing whatever they can? That's where we're at. That's where we're at. And again, that applies to our own U.S. southern border with Mexico as equally as it does to Ukraine's sovereign border with Russia.
Yes, and we're doing a show on the state of the southern border, and probably next week with a number of ranking retired Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection officials, along with footage that will shock. I think we have to, Claire, as the free world, as the world of liberal democracy, we have to support Ukraine. Because Ukraine, yes, it is a proxy in our war with Russia, but it is a necessary one, in my opinion, because if Ukraine falls, Russia's going to be emboldened, and it's not going to stop there. Putin has said what he wants. He wants to reclaim what was the old Soviet Union, and he's crazy about it. So if we don't stop Russia in their tracks, as you said, it's going to become a Mad Max type of world, unfortunately.
Which I think none of us really wants to see happen.
No.
So, you know, there's a reason why we support both securing our own, defending our own southern border, as well as defending the one with Ukraine. Thank you, Tony, and look forward to the next time with you.
It's always a pleasure, Claire. Again,
thank you very much.
Homeland Security Off the Record. Subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.